I'm Ruxandra. I'm coming from Romania. I'm a hypnotist, I'm a psychologist. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and I'm teaching hypnosis and regression therapy in the past probably 8 years, mainly in Romania. Usually when I'm teaching in English, I'm much more nervous than when I'm teaching in Romanian. So in the next 5 to 7 minutes, I will make probably a lot of mistakes. Usually I'm getting better after 5 or 7 minutes, so bear with me. I absolutely adore regression work because I've seen huge results with my clients. So that's why I'm here today in front of you to speak about regression, and we are speaking today about childhood regression because we already know that a lot of issues that we perceive in our adult age are coming from previous childhood experiences. That's why I believe it's really important to know how we can deal with the childhood regression. And more than that, I believe that the goal of the regression, it's not the memory. The goal of regression therapy, it's the healing, the transformation that we are doing at the end of the process. Because regression without healing, regression without transformation means absolutely nothing. It can be even worse for the client. If I'm taking the client, I'm putting him in the hypnosis, I'm helping him to see a traumatic experience, doesn't matter that it's past life, current life, whatever, and after he saw that traumatic experience, I'm saying, well, mate, goodbye, nice to see you. What's for? If someone is curious, he can very well read a book, look a movie, but it's no point to go and see a regression therapist in order to only explore the process. But in order to do a good transformation, a good healing, I need to do a good exploration. And that's what we're talking about today. So my workshop, it's called How to Help Our Clients Overcome Childhood Trauma. And before everything else, let's see what a psychological trauma means. Because we are using so much this word trauma, traumatic, everything is traumatic, everything is a trauma. It's definitely not. A true psychological trauma is defined as being a personal experience in which the person experienced a sort of fragmentation, a sort of split, because what happened in that moment felt overwhelming for him in that moment. And more than that, the problem is that this is leading to long-term deterioration in vitality, identity, and the capacity of self-regulation. That was a trauma. It is for real. When we are experiencing a trauma, Franz Rupert made a very nice draw. The split, it's not in two. The split that is happening in a trauma, it's a three-way split. Meaning that, luckily, we will always have a healthy part of us. Always, it will remain a healthy part of us. But beside that, we will have a traumatized part, the part that was injured, let's say, and the surviving part. The surviving part is that part of us that will use whatever mechanism in order to keep us safe. That might be denial, that might be projection, that might be memory loss, or whatever I need as a psychic in order to survive. Because all of those defense mechanisms have been created in order to keep my psychic safe. So these are part of us. What do I need to do in order to prepare my client for a childhood regression. Because it's not as if the client is coming, hello, hello, just go on the bed and go into the childhood, you know? Before everything else, I need to have a proper interview with my client, you know, to find out, first of all, why the client is there. What made him come to me? And if during the interview I consider then that the best way to work with him would be a childhood regression, that's fine. But there are a few things that I need to do. First of all, like in any kind of therapy, I need to create a good report with my client. And we are speaking about report, you know. And I've heard only today this word of report for quite a few times. But what does it mean to create a good report? A good report is considered being the fact that the client feels that I am really actually listening to him, meaning not labeling, not knowing from the very first moment what's his issue. You know that kind of therapist, not us, others, that the client is coming and he's saying, I have a lack of confidence. And the therapist is like, yeah, it's because of your mother. What do you know about my mother? Yeah, probably it's your mother, but still. It might be your mother. Most likely it's your mother. But when a client is not feeling that you're actually listening to him, we can't speak about report. Because if me as a client, I'm feeling that the therapist is looking forward to label me and to put me in a certain box, he will definitely lose me. Right. And then what other means? The trust. The client needs to have trust in the therapist. And the interesting part is that when we are speaking about the therapy, the trust needs to be in two different ways. First of all, the client needs to trust me as a professionist, like I know to do my profession, I know to do my work, you know. But beside that, the client needs to trust me as a human being, you know, like I'm a human being that he likes. At least for him, it feels as if I'm a good person, I'm a nice person, and so on. Why do I say that? Because if I'm asking a plumber to come at home, the only trust I need with a plumber is the professional one. I don't need to like him. He needs to do whatever he needs to do, you know? On the other side, we all know a lot of very nice people that we would have a few coffees or beer with them, but we wouldn't trust them professionally, right? So in order for the client to really trust me, he needs to trust me as a professional and as a human being. That means that not all the clients will like me, because the only way I can be, it's an authentic self. And if I'm being authentic, some people will feel I'm trustworthy and will like me, some other don't. And it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And then rapport means empathy, meaning that me as a therapist, I can imagine how the client feels, you know? And here we need to be very careful, because I've heard a lot of therapists, when the client is speaking about something, the therapist will say, I know what you feel. And if the client would ask, did you experience this? No. Then you don't know how the client feels. You can imagine how the client feels. And this is different, and this is the real thing. What else I need to do? I need to explain to my client how hypnosis feels. Why? Because we all know that There are a lot of people that would expect that they would come to the therapy, they will sit on the bed, I will do a magic, they will pass out, and whenever they will open their eyes, they will not remember anything, but they will not be smoking anymore, they have lost 20 pounds, they are very confident. Did you have this kind of person? Really? Why? I don't want to be part of that. I'm here, I'm paying you for an hour, just fix me. I want to be illuminated when I'm living here, you know? And sadly enough, it's not working like that, you know? So I need to explain the client how hypnosis feels. Because otherwise, guess what? Most of the clients will say, I haven't been hypnotized. Of course, because if the client believes that being hypnotized is like losing completely any awareness, he will not be, because that's not the kind of hypnosis I'm doing. Then, and this is really important, I need to mention that when I'm working with childhood regression, they might be very strong emotions arising. And I'm a strong believer into releasing emotions. I know that about catharsis, the opinions are splitted. And for me, it's like I'm completely a fan of letting the client ventilate whatever emotions are arising, you know? But in the beginning, I need to tell my client, you know what? During the process, there might be times when some very strong emotions might arise. And all you have to do is just let them be. Because otherwise the client will not know, you know? And it's very likely that during a childhood trauma, he experienced quite a few strong emotions, and he kept those emotions. He didn't know how to deal with the emotions. So I need to clarify this even in the beginning. Then I need to have a very, very clear intention for the process, you know? I've seen therapists doing regression just like that. Let's go in a moment in the childhood. What kind of moment? What for? Because again, the whole goal of regression therapy, it's the healing, it's the transformation. How would I know how to help my client if we don't have a clear intention? Just the other day, I had an email from someone saying, you know what, I want a regression in my childhood because I want to know if my neighbor abused me. I believe these are one of the most dangerous processes if you're accepting such a thing. Because when someone is coming with this idea, I want to know if blah, 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 he already imagined that happening. So the chance that he will visit that memory is quite huge, because he already ruminated enough the idea if he got to the point where he's calling a therapist to investigate that. So from my point of view, I will never ever take a client on this kind of intention. I might even explain to the client, you already thought about that. The probability that you will create that is quite huge. Let's see what's behind that. What happened that made you consider that? When I'm saying to choose a very clear intention for the process, I mean what's the problem of the client in here and now that he wants to deal with. What's happening now? It might be a lack of confidence. It might be a fear of intimacy. There might be a few emotions that are arising and the client doesn't know why they are there. Whatever it is, but when we are speaking about the intention, it's about what do I want to resolve with the client. In fact, what the client wants to resolve through the processes that I'm doing with him, okay? Because without a clear intention, it's like a journey. If I don't have a clear intention, I want to go there, how would I know I ever reached where I wanted? You know? I don't know. So that's why it's really, really important to clarify with the client what's the intention of our process. And of course, I would want to tell you that we will pick an intention, we will do child regression, and let's say I have a client that feels a very strong lack of confidence in himself, and I would do a childhood regression, and just after a session, all my clients with all the problems after just one session will be completely transformed. We know it's not true, okay? We know that usually it's a process. That means more than one session. Yes, it's true. From time to time, we have the blessing to see people that transform their lives after just one session. And it's amazing to see that. But I believe it's not realistic for ourselves to expect something like that, or to encourage our clients to expect something like that. If it's happening in one session, God bless. But otherwise, we will have to have a process about that. So what's the clear intention for our therapeutic journey? What does the client wants to resolve in his life? How he will know that our process have been successful? No? What's the measure? How will he know? We are good with time. A very important subject that I want to mention, it's what's called false memory symptom. That's something real. And as a regression therapist, we need to be very aware of that. And I've put here just a few clinical studies and the book that are speaking about this. Basically, what's happening? If the therapist it's leading the process towards a certain direction, it's very likely that false memories will be created. Memory, it's not a very fixed thing. Memory is quite very flexible. So a bad intervention using the memory could be really bad for the client. So if I want to work with this, I need to be very, very aware. You know, because this thing, it's not happening, aren't real. It can happen. It has been proven that it's happening, you know? What's the difference? How can I be sure I'm not encouraging my client to create false memories? Here it's the difference between guiding and leading. Guiding means to guide the client in order for him to tell me what's happening without interfering with the process, while leading, it's encouraging a client to go towards a direction. And leading can be very, very subtle, you know? And I'm supervising future therapists for at least 8 years. And I'm seeing how they believe they aren't leading, and still they are. Let's give you an example. The client says, I'm leaving school and I'm going home. And the therapist will say something like, and just tell me when you reached home. Did the client told you that he reached home? No, he didn't. Or, I'm waiting for my mother. Tell me when the mother arrived. Who told you the mother ever arrived? You know? It's funny, but it's not.
So when you're saying leading, you mean making assumptions?
Yeah. Okay. But they are very ugly, obvious assumptions. Like the client would say, someone is assaulting me, and a very smart therapist would say, is your father? Yeah. But that's brutal. We won't even talk about that. But they are even much more subtle assumptions, you know? Like I said, I'm waiting for my mother. When is your mother arriving? That's an assumption. And the only way, I believe, in which you can really take care of this non-leading attitude is to do a very strong shift in your own head. Meaning that while you're listening to a story, your job as a therapist is to be like a blank sheet of paper. You know? While I'm listening a story, my job is to be just a blank sheet of paper, nothing else. And I'm telling the therapist I'm teaching, if at some point you realize you have an opinion about something that is happening for the client, I have a very special technique for this. Whenever you feel you have an opinion. When you feel you have an opinion, you have to take a very big glass of water and do like that. That's what you have to do with every opinion you're having while being with a client, you know? Because if you as a therapist, you're not very careful with your own opinions, your opinions will get away into the client's process. And it will not be a good outcome from that. So that's why in this process, as a therapist, we need to be very, very self-aware. You know? It's not my job to judge the client or anyone in his life. It's not my job to fix the client. It's not my job to know where the client is leading to. While I'm exploring with the client, I'm a blank paper. It is as if the client is drawing on the paper, and everything I can do, it's something like asking what is in that corner. No? Without assuming what could be into that corner. But this means a very, very strong self-awareness while in the process. That means that me as a therapist, I have my own therapy process ongoing, you know? Because if a client comes to me telling a story that will touch some points that are not healed in me, I will go like without even knowing why. So the easiest way in order to guide and not lead is to mainly ask very open questions. My favorite questions are, tell me more, and what's happening next? Because if I'm asking the client, tell me more, what's happening next? It is as if I would ask what's in that corner without interfering. From my point of view, it's okay to use closed questions, but the closed questions that we can use are something like, is it daytime or nighttime? Because it's day or night, you know? Are you inside a room or outside? No, because it's quite clear. This may be the only two options. Or if the client is telling me a person is coming, I may ask if it's a woman or a man, because mostly these are the two options, you know. So it's fine to help the client sometimes with closed questions when those are the only available options. Light or dark are mostly the only options. You will have clients saying sometimes, it's almost night. It's sun rising. Okay, it's fine. But otherwise, when I'm exploring the actual story, the best questions to use as much as possible is like, tell me more, you know, and what's happening next. I'm using tell me more if the client is saying something like, I'm in my room playing with my brother, my mother is coming home. Okay, tell me more. She's coming, she's saying that, blah, blah, blah. And after that, she's leaving the room, let's say. Okay, and what's happening next? And the difference in between the two questions is that when I'm asking tell me more, it is as if I want to explore this specific moment, you know? And when I'm asking the client what's happening next, it's as if I'm moving him a bit towards the time. No? So if I want to explore more the moment, it's like, tell me more. If not, what's happening next? Because sometimes the clients will go in a very, very deep, completely nonsense details, you know, the color of the flowers and so on. And it's good, that will deepening their trance, but if the trance is deep enough, and if I want to explore in order to be able to go to the transformation, I will move them forward. It is a difference between embodied and disembodied memories. Embodied memory means that the client will explore the memory from the body, you know, as if I'm myself and as if I'm experienced that, as if it would be the first time when I would have experienced. Dissociated memories means that the client will observe what's happening from outside the body. Usually, we prefer the client to explore the memories embodied, because when a client is embodied, he will be very well connected with the emotions. Basically, in regression therapy, more than the story, we are interested in the emotions. It's not as much what happened there, it's more about how the client experienced what happened there, you know? Because one is the story, the other one is like the way he lived the story. And in the end, all the results in the adult life are based on the emotions he had on those experiences. So usually, I will invite the client to step in his body, to connect with the emotions he's feeling there. And besides telling me about the story, I'm asking a lot about the emotions he's feeling, how he's living whatever is happening in that memory. As I said, I'm a strong believer in the catharsis. I believe that catharsis can be really beneficial for a client if it's handled well by the therapist. What a catharsis means, it's a sort of deep cleansing. We are keeping so many emotions inside us, and we are so good in put that down and cover all those emotions, that there are a lot of people that are really developing physical conditions because of that, you know? So the releasing of these memories, it's quite important. It's just blocked energy that is there. I've seen that there are therapists that are afraid of being witness to the emotions. And with the risk of losing half of my room now, the reason we are not comfortable in witnessing our client's emotions, it's because we have issues with our own emotions, you know? That's why we are afraid to be witnessing the emotions. Of course, that now anyone it's not going, because it would be too obvious. But that's why I said it. So basically, all I have to do when a client is releasing emotion is to be present, to be centered, you know? He needs me there, really present, really centered, really lucid, you know? If we are, both of us are crying, it's not good, you know? The client, it's okay to cry, but it's not okay for the therapist to cry with the client in that moment. In the catharsis, it's very important to encourage the client to let it all out. Let it all out, let it all out, let it all out. I might even told him that it's just a memory. It's just a memory. Then it's important to match my tone, my voice, with the energy of the client. Because if the client is there, oh, my mother left me, and I'm like, yeah, let it all out. Let it all out. That's not working. I need to match my voice and my energy with the client's energy. Then I need to repeat keywords. And very, very important, I believe this is the most important thing during a catharsis. I have to speak continuously. While the client is in the catharsis, my voice will be the anchor that will remind him that it's a memory and he's releasing all the emotions. Because if I will stop talking, it will be much, much harder for him to do that process. So my job is to be completely centered and speak the entire time of the catharsis. And whenever I feel it's enough, all I have to do is to tell the client, go to the end now. It's over, it's just a memory, go to the end now. My voice is the one that it's keeping the client conscious a bit that it's a memory, and will help him come back in here and now whenever that was enough. Because I don't want to re-traumatize my client. I want my client to spill out all those repressed emotions, but that's all. So in order to do that, he needs me to accompany him in all this process. as I said, go to the end. In the catharsis, it's important for the client to release the energy. I'm not finding the story. I might be in the regression with the client, and the client at some point, he might say, my father comes at home, and out of the blue, he can burst in tears. All I have to do then is to help the client release that energy. I'm not exploring anything. Who knows what happened? In that particular moment, it's not important. It's important for the client to release the energy, and after he will release the energy, I can ask him what was happening there. You know? But while he's crying and screaming, it's absolutely no point to try to find out what the story is. You know? Okay, I will find the story, but not then. When do I want to use dissociation? Because I told you, usually I prefer to explore with the client associated. I will prefer to use dissociation when the trauma was really, really strong, you know? When we are speaking about really nasty traumas, it's really hard for the client to explore it, at least for the very first time, associated, no? Let's say, I don't know, it was bitten or it was a rape or something really horrible. It's absolutely no point. You know, it's okay, just go dissociated. Even if he's dissociated, the catharsis will be big enough because he will release enough energy. It's okay. It's enough. I don't have to really torment the client more than is necessary. After I found out the story, only after that, I reached at the point where my job is the most important, let's say, in the healing and transformation. Because as I said, if the client is doing only the regression and then he will leave home, it's just letting him go home with the Pandora box open. It's absolutely no good into this, you know? So I'm usually teaching my students to open as many doors as they are able to close in the same session. I'm not exploring with the client his childhood for 2 hours. And then in 2 hours I realize, first of all, I don't have any more time. Second of all, me and the client, we are so tired we cannot continue. In each session, I will open as many doors as I'm able to close in that session. I'm not leaving the client to go home just like that with the trauma remembered. Very good job. So about healing and integration, there are a few techniques that I'm usually the most. When I'm working with childhood regression, I really, really love to ask the adult self to meet the inner child, you know? And sometimes this meeting can be really peaceful and really loving. Sometimes the child, it's not as willing and confident into the adult because he has experiences with adults. But bringing together the adult self and the inner child, I believe it's one of the most emotional and strong processes that we can do. How many of you have experienced as a client or therapist this meeting of inner child? Okay, that's great. Then we can do the adult-child conversation, you know? Ask the child to speak with the adult, ask the adult to speak with the child, to tell each other whatever it hasn't been told so far. I'm usually asking the adult to give to the child the resources that he knows the child would have needed towards his childhood. And I say, what are the resources? And the adult could say, I don't know, love. And I will ask the adult, just imagine a bubble, a balloon full of love, and just give that balloon full of love to the child. And then I'm using suggestions related to the child, that the child is taking this balloon with love, is inspiring all the love in the balloon, and will have this love forever and ever with him. Now, and so on. We can offer to the child as many resources the adult knows the child needs. And it's better to ask the client what the child could have needed, because the client knows better than anyone else what happened to that child. And then something really important is the conversation with the characters that we've met in the regression. Let's say that the client went into a memory where something happened with the mother and with the brother, you know? In the transformation part, I can ask first the energy of the mother to come into the process and to meet the adult self and the inner child. And when we are having this meeting, I will always ask the adult to speak first with the mother, because this empowers the child. And then the child would speak to the mother. We'll finish with the mother, then we'll call the brother or whomever was there to be spoken with. Integration, it's that part where we've done the splitting with adult self and inner child. But as you know from parts therapy, whenever I'm calling out different parts before finishing the process, what do I need to do? To integrate the parts. You know, I'm not leaving the client go home with splitted parts. No? So a beautiful technique related to inner child is to ask the adult to imagine that the child is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller till he fits in his palm, and with the palm he would put the child into the heart. I've never seen a client that didn't cry at this moment. Never. Never. But that's that very, very, very beautiful cry. And while the child is growing inside the adult self, I would do a reframing of the memories that we touched during the regression. You know, let's say that during the process we went to a memory that was at, I don't know, 2 years old, another at 7, and another at 15. You know, I would ask the client to put the 2 years old into the heart, and then I will ask to go back to that memory where, I don't know, the mother left home, and with all this knowing, just observe how he's living differently now, that experience. And this, I always make the distinction between reframing and rewriting. Reframing means that the client is living the exact same story, but emotionally different, because now he has a new understanding and new resources, versus rescripting, which means that the client will change the story. I'm not a big fan of rescripting, absolutely not, and I will explain you why. Because I believe that our therapy work, a good result, or always the result of good therapy, is to empower the client on a long term and to help him deal with whatever is happening in life. And it's absolutely no good to train my client to go into denial, you know? Because when he was 2 years old, I can invite him to rewrite the story. the mother didn't leave. The mother stayed with him for the next 3 years. Okay, let's say it's fine. It's not quite, but let's say it is. But what's happening if in 2 years' time her husband is leaving her? How will she be able to deal with that? So my goal as a therapist is to empower my client on a long term, to train him deal with life in the best way possible. That's why in therapy I'm using reframing, not rewriting, because life is happening. And the therapy goal is to help the client develop his resilience and to deal with whatever this life is bringing to him. Hopefully it will not be the case, but still, someone will die, someone will live, something will happen in his life at some point. And that, the future pacing. I always like to end the processes with future pacing. But in order to do a very good future pace, I need to know from the interview what I told you, how the client will know that the problem is solved. Let's say the client came to me because he's lacking confidence. And in the interview, he said that for him, if the problem would be resolved, that would mean that whenever he goes in the office, he would be able to joke with his colleagues. No? I will always include this into the future pacing, because I want to use the basic hypnotic suggestion into the transformation and integration part. Hypnotic suggestions, if you're asking me, it's the base. And we always need to use the base because that's an amazing tool. And it's good to have regression, let's say, on top of suggestions, but let's do not forget about hypnotic suggestions, how strong they are. How do I conclude a session with a client in which I've done a regression? I will want to know the client feedback, how he feels, what the insight he gained. Bear in mind that just after the trance, the client is still in a semi-trance, So we need to be very careful what we are saying and doing during this time, because he's still very suggestible, and I will use this time in order to encourage all the suggestions I already gave to him. Then I want to help him do some grounding, because whenever he leaves my office, I need to be sure he's okay. If I know that the client is drove to see me, I will ask him, and if I feel that he's not quite completely 100% well, like completely there, and I will ask him to just walk at least 10 minutes before going into the car. But mainly, I'm suggesting to my clients to not to drive when they are seeing me, to use an alternative option. I can do for grounding breathing exercises, mindful exercises, or the physical sensations. I will make a summary with the key insights he has from that process. And here I will ask him what he can see that he's able to do different in his life from now on. Because it's really good to do a transformation on a subtle level, but beside that transformation, in order for something to be really changed in our life, we need to do something different. We need to take actions. So I will encourage the client in this point, what are these actions that he can take now in order to do something different? And then I will encourage him to do some self-care processes that day, like go to a massage or do something for himself, and use the journal in order to accompany him into this process. That's all. Yeah, I've got it. We still have time for questions. Yes, please.
I've got a quick one. When you said about the rescripting, sometimes when I've worked with a client and they've gone back into wherever they are, one of my questions is, what's that younger you need that they didn't have?
Mm-hmm.
If that is like, I needed mum to be there, then I will get them to bring that in. Do you consider that to not be a...
It's not right and wrong in the end. Yeah, it's not right and wrong. I can share with you what I'm doing. It doesn't mean that something else is wrong. I prefer not to change the story unless I have absolutely no other choice. And I've seen that if I'm asking the adult self to give the child all the resources he needs, when I'm going into the reframing, it's much easier. And if the child needs an adult there, I prefer to make him aware that he has always his adult self there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Forgive me if you've mentioned this and I missed it, but when you were talking about the growth and reframing and the child is going to go into the heart, do you actually suggest for that child to grow up
Yes.
at the adult age
Yes. Till he's reaching the actual age of my client.
of the client?
Yeah, that means that you need to know the client age.
Yeah.
Be very careful, because if you're saying to a woman that she's reaching 50 and she's only 48, like all the report, it's over. It was another question here. Yes.
Yes, how do you know that you would regress to childhood? You could actually regress to any other time with a specific feeling or a previous life or whatever?
So my goal at the convention, my subject at my workshop, it's related to childhood regression. So officially, we are on a childhood regression. Non-officially, I'm working with regression, So basically, when I'm asking the client to go to the cause, to the root cause. And I'm working with whatever it's there. It might be, from my point of view, past lives. It might be in utero. It might be childhood, and whatever it's there is there. I do have clients that do not believe in past lives, and it's fine, because they might go either to the childhood or they might go into the story. They would interpret it as a metaphor, and I'm fine, because I'm not a historian, I'm a therapist. So if the client wants to process a metaphor because he doesn't believe in other existence, and his life is getting a little bit better after processing that metaphor, I'm happy. I have absolutely no attachment on what's being called, because it's not about the story. We are using the story in order to get the emotions, in order to transform the emotions. So the story is the less important thing, but still I don't want to create false memories.
How do you technically do it? Do you use a metaphor, a hallway, a doors?
The regression?
Yeah.
I'm usually using an induction. I prefer like a 10-15 minutes induction. And after the induction, I'm usually using a door. And I'm saying, this is the door. When I count to 3, your subconscious mind will lead you to the cause of this, whatever it's there.
Do you do training in the UK?
No, but I can recommend you someone from UK.
How long is an average regression therapy session with you?
I would say an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's average normally.
When you were saying about you asked the client to sort of imagine what the child could have.
Can you speak up, please?
When you said about the, asking the client what does the child need and passing the buttons, sometimes the client just doesn't have access to any sort of idea of the results. They're just like, I have no idea, even though it seems quite obvious.
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking at it. How do you encourage people to sort of attain a result that they have no idea of?
I've never seen a client that had absolutely no idea about no resource. I do remember a few clients that gave the child just one resource, let's say love, and I could see from the story that the child maybe would have needed something like confidence or something like that. So in these cases, I would say, what do you say about offering him the feeling of confidence? I would never say, let's give him confidence, but I would say, what do you say about that? Plus, I've seen that sometimes after I'm inviting the client to offer something, out of the blue, he's realizing, it is as if he realized what I'm talking about. And then he's like having another 5. Okay, so the last question, because they all
What is your intake on the, you mentioned trauma, and some clients, they really experience maybe sexual trauma or something that's very horrific to go there, and they are completely blocking it out. Is there any way that you would say that it's a good way to work with those clients or to support them to visit that?
I will always go into the process from the problem that is present in the life, you know. I prefer not to go on a sexual trauma because that could create things, but it might be that, and I do remember a client coming to me saying that she has some really big issues in the sexual life with the husband. So basically we left from there. And we went wherever the story went. Okay, thank you so much. I'll be around till Sunday so we can speak.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Thank you for this great presentation.